Hi, I'm Sarah Dwighter.
And I'm Alan Zhao.
And here's a roundup of this week's news.
This week marks the 100th anniversary of the birth of Kim Il-sung, the founder of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Pyongyang will host celebrations throughout the week, the most controversial of which is a planned satellite launch. This would be the third such test North Korea has conducted in the last 15 years. Although Pyongyang maintains that this launch is a move to develop the national space program, some foreign observers believe that it may be a precursor to another nuclear test. International analysts assert that the satellite's propulsion rocket is very similar to rockets that could carry ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads. U.S. satellites recorded activity at the same site in the Northeast, where nuclear devices were tested in 2006 and 2009.
Tensions flared as Filipino warships confronted Chinese fishing vessels in disputed territory between the two nations in the South China Sea. In response, two Chinese surveillance ships entered the standoff at the Scarborough Shoal, and neither side shows signs of stepping down. Although officials from both sides have expressed hopes of a diplomatic solution, the parties remain rigid in their rhetoric. The Philippines Foreign Secretary Alberto Del Rosario declared, "If the Philippines is challenged, we are prepared to secure our sovereignty." And Chinese Foreign Minister spokesman Liu Weimin responded, "We call on them to stop making new troubles and work with China to create good conditions for healthy and stable development of bilateral ties."
South Sudanese troops seized the town Heglig, an oil-rich town in the disputed territory between South Sudan and Sudan. This incident is the latest in a series of clashes between the nations, including reports of Sudanese airstrikes on South Sudanese troops earlier this week. Sudan's ambassador to the UN, Dafa Allah El-Hag Ali Osman, vowed retaliation for the town seizure in a statement to the UN Security Council. The United States and the United Nations condemned the military action and have called for immediate withdrawal. The town is in a region responsible for half of Sudan's oil production.
After a year of violence, the Syrian government has agreed to suspend military operations and enter into a ceasefire with the Free Syrian Army opposition group. The ceasefire is in accordance with Kofi Annan's UN-supported plan to end violence in Syria and bring President Bashar al-Assad to the negotiating table. However, Assad has maintained the right to combat criminal and terrorist activity by armed groups, and many fear that since Assad's regime categorizes any opposition to the government as terrorist activity, the ceasefire will not bring an end to the violence. Diplomats and activists stationed in Syria have reported continued violence and military crackdowns, even after the announcement of the ceasefire.
Egypt's 100-member constitutional panel has been suspended and is awaiting a court ruling on its legality. The assembly, which was made up of 50 members of the upper and lower houses of the Egyptian parliament and 50 public figures, was charged with the task of drafting a new constitution which would be put to public referendum. However, over 24 members have boycotted the assembly, stating that the structure of the panel allows for Islamist bias, as Islamist groups are a majority in parliament. They have called for a restructuring of the Constitutional Assembly to better represent all social and political groups in Egypt. It now seems unlikely that a constitution will be finalized before presidential elections at the end of May.
Omar Suleiman, the former head of the Egyptian General Intelligence Agency, has announced his candidacy for the upcoming presidential election in May. He vowed that, if elected, he would bring an end to the chaos in Egypt and revive its struggling economy. However, his ties with the former Egyptian government have called into question the legitimacy of his candidacy. In addition to serving as Hosni Mubarak's General Intelligence Chief from 1993 to 2011, Suleiman was briefly vice president to Mubarak during the uprising in 2011. He has also been accused of authorizing numerous human rights abuses while head of the General Intelligence Agency, including the torture of political prisoners. In response to these criticisms, Suleiman has stated that he has no intention of reinventing the old regime or reversing the progress of the revolution.
The U.S. and Afghan governments have reached an agreement on the controversial night raids. Night raids and special forces operations in general have played a major role in the counterinsurgency campaign. Special forces operations will now be overseen by the Afghan government, and foreign forces will be shifted to a support role. Special forces missions, in particular night raids, have been a large source of tension in US-Afghan relations. The missions had been criticized by the Afghan government as violating Afghan sovereignty and causing too many civilian casualties. The agreement takes effect immediately and is being described by both governments as a significant step towards full foreign troop withdrawal.